You need to hear this case right now. A young woman is found dead, and neighbors claim the culprit is a window peeper. Despite mounting evidence, the case goes unsolved until police catch a break, connecting this case to a savage past and saving an innocent life in the process. Stephanie Bennett couldn't help but feel unsafe in her own home when neighbors had reported a window peeper in the apartment complex. Without warning, a murder, and no one had any idea how this could happen. Investigators find proof the culprit has killed before. Authorities didn't believe he was finished with his disgusting pattern. Without being caught, there was no stopping this vicious killer. For Stephanie Bennett, a recent graduate from Roanoke College, her life was only just beginning. Accomplishing a degree in business, she quickly landed a job with IBM and was elated to finally set her roots down. This was her first real glimpse into the real world, and being on her own, she was full of potential. Stephanie was finally settling into being on her own, but after a year of working, one day she never showed up. Known for being a responsible woman, she always showed up on time. After numerous attempts to get in touch with her, concern arose immediately. When family members secured her apartment key from the building manager, they entered the home to discover the apartment ransacked and Stephanie nowhere to be found. Parts of the 911 call indicate a saddening scene. Stephanie's lifeless body lies on the bathroom floor. Neighbors claim to have heard a woman scream, and shortly after, a car leaves the scene. Police searched tirelessly for clues that would lead them to a cold-blooded killer. No known enemies. It was hard to fathom who could have done this. There was no reason for something like this to happen. Living on the ground floor, her apartment was easy to access. However, there weren't any signs of forced entry into the home. There is speculation the killer snuck in through the bedroom window. Investigators found the window screen misplaced, suggesting the culprit had gained entry from there. Nothing was stolen, which is usual in premeditated murder cases. There were some items misplaced in the closet, such as a tissue box and a water glass, which would seem someone had been in the closet, waiting. Proving premeditation, the killer was wearing gloves, since no fingerprints were located on the scene of the crime. A clue was found outside the apartment in the bushes near the apartment. The found items that were believed to be connected to the crime. 6 pairs of women's thongs and underwear were splayed. Appearing now, this was a sexually motivated crime. Examiners conclude Stephanie was killed around midnight. Phone records show Stephanie was talking to her boyfriend, Walter Robinson, sometime around 8 p.m. Walter was quickly ruled out as a suspect, since he was a 4-hour drive away from Stephanie with witnesses to corroborate his alibi. Stephanie was known for keeping to herself most of the time. She never engaged in anything that would put her at such great risk. Analysis of Stephanie's computer unsurfaced emails sent several weeks prior to her murder, corresponding with her sister about being afraid, but not explaining why. She had encountered a man peeping into her window. She didn't see it, but neighbors expressed their concerns to her. After the reported incident, Stephanie grew more concerned. She was a free spirit and dependable friend that was never concerned with how others perceived her. The murder of a 23-year-old was growing more difficult to solve each day. Investigators claim that in 13 years on the force, they have never seen a case have such an effect on the community. Unfortunately, through further examination, medical experts conclude signs of sexual assault. They were able to recover DNA, and that sample was compared to known criminals in their database. There were no hits. With not a lot of evidence found at the crime scene, police turned to witnesses in a DNA dragnet. Talking to over 250 people that were in close contact to Stephanie and dozens of people in the apartment complex, all efforts came up empty. The investigation was quickly growing cold. Many neighbors did report seeing a thin man that was tall and lanky wearing a sweatshirt. This man was seen loitering in the area of Stephanie's apartment. Investigators arranged for a sketch artist to work with eyewitness accounts to come up with a composite of the culprit. This was later released to newspapers and television to increase awareness. This worked and phone calls flooded in. Police tracked down every lead meticulously. Checking with numerous promising leads of sex offenders in the area, they started to get their hopes up. State Bureau of Investigation came back negative on the DNA samples taken from the new leads. Investigators had to start over and re-interview neighbors, which turned up new evidence. They reported seeing the peeper walking with a dog. They further described the dog as a large Rottweiler walking from the Bridgeport apartments over into Dominion apartments, located across the street. Stephanie lived at the Bridgeport apartments. Investigators quickly changed gears to looking into residents of the Dominion apartments. Apartment manager at the Dominion apartments recalls a tenant with a black dog similar to the one in question, but had since moved away when the police presence increased. The name Drew Planten first arose, and investigators found a strange 35-year-old loner with no criminal history, who was not married and had a job analyzing fertilizer ingredients at the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. After interviewing those that knew him, they all said he kept to himself a lot. When police spoke to Planten, he claimed to have never heard the name Stephanie Bennett before, which was odd because anyone in the area was familiar with the case. Planten refused to go to police headquarters for further interrogation, so officers arranged to meet him at his apartment the next day. When investigators arrived at 5 o'clock sharp, they noticed suspicious behavior from Planten. After only speaking for moments, he began shaking profusely. When investigators pointed this out to him, he dismissed the claims, saying he was fine. He refused a DNA test, quickly making him the prime suspect, though they had no evidence against him, and he had no resemblance to the police sketch. This meant they could not get a court order for a DNA swab. Police hit a new dead end, and no probable cause to force Drew to anything. Experts suggested a ruse to gather evidence from Planten's trash. This launched a surveillance on Drew Planten lasting weeks. Despite rigorous surveillance, they were unable to obtain any form of DNA sample from Planten. Even when Planten went out to eat, he was careful to eat only finger foods. He even went so far to put his straw in his pocket when he would leave the table and flush napkins. There was a break when Planten took a bite of some pudding and wiped his fork clean. He had not done so properly. When investigators tested this sample, there were 2 hits on the DNA result. Unfortunately, it wasn't going to be so simple. 2 results came back from the test, a strong profile and a weaker profile. Further analysis showed the restaurant hadn't cleaned their silverware properly. The weaker profile, however, had matched the DNA recovered from the crime scene. With a profile this weak, it would not be admissible in court, so investigators had to push harder to catch their killer. With new motivation being on the right track, they needed a strong sample from Planten. Investigators used this new discovery to get swabs from Planten's work keyboard and other sources, which lead to an exact match to the DNA found on Stephanie Bennett's vaginal swab. Investigators believe the killer broke in through the bedroom window where the screen had been misplaced. He waited in the closet for Stephanie to come home. His plan was prolonged when Stephanie called her boyfriend upon coming home, completely unaware a killer was waiting in the closet. Evidence shows the killer was hiding in the second bedroom and attacked shortly after 9 p.m. when Stephanie ended the phone call to her boyfriend. She was sexually assaulted, then strangled. Upon further search of Planten's apartment led to a grime and perverted lifestyle. They found a lot of pornography, and even more disturbing, they found a lock-picking kit and a crime bag indicating Planten may have killed before. Possibly even more horrifying, and a further indication of this, is that police also found bits of mail in the assailant's apartment addressed to a woman in Lansing, Michigan named Rebecca Huseman. The postmark was from 6 years earlier, and through a quick background check, it was revealed that Rebecca Huseman was found killed in Lansing, Michigan 6 years earlier, but that case had never been solved. Coincidentally, Planten had been attending Michigan State University at that time. The campus was located only a few miles from where Rebecca was working as a topless dancer. Rebecca had greater aspirations, but turned to dancing for quick cash. Rebecca and her fiancé had dreams and were saving up for marriage. Though after Rebecca was finishing with work one night in October 1999, the bouncer of the club walked her to her car and watched her drive away from the last time, as she drove up to her apartment and was attacked in the parking lot. The killer fired a .45 caliber handgun. Rebecca's boyfriend woke in the middle of the night to see Rebecca was not home. He found her car with the door open and she was covered in blood. There was no heartbeat. When investigators arrived on the scene, there was no sign of robbery, as nothing in the vehicle appeared to have been disturbed. Rebecca's purse was also untouched. Police thought this to be a personal crime. On the ground near Rebecca's car, they recovered a shell casing. Without any connection to club patrons and no substantial evidence recovered at the crime scene, police were unable to determine any leads. Police reviewed the club's surveillance footage and hadn't seen anything suspicious. They had hit a dead end until police in Raleigh, North Carolina called with Rebecca's mail in Drew Planten's apartment. This was the break they were working for. They linked the .45 caliber to both murders. Further analysis, when the guns were test-fired, showed a clear connection between the crimes in expert opinions. When these discoveries came to light, Planten was already being held in police custody in North Carolina. His court appearances were becoming increasingly difficult when he refused to walk and was strapped to a gurney and wheeled around the courtroom for his first appearance. He also did not even open his eyes. As the trial was heating up the case to a dramatic turn, Planten suffocated himself with a plastic bag in prison. He's left many questions to this case unanswered with his death. Further investigation found more ear evidence that would suggest Planten had looked into doing this to other females he had been stalking. They found Planten had been stalking another woman for some time and was intending to strike soon. Despite the tragedy of this case, the timing had led to an innocent life being saved. Without forensic science, ballistics and recreation the case, Stephanie Bennett's murder would have certainly gone unresolved for an unforeseeable future, and Rebecca Huseman's case along with it. This is a clear case of when dogged police investigation meets modern science in another case of law and disorder. Thanks for tuning in. Continue to stay informed about ongoing cases and top stories with law and disorder. Remember to look after yourself and others.